Thank you both for being here. Let me start. I have a document in my hand. This is an unclassified document from the National Intelligence Council, basically the office, the Director of National Intelligence. Let me read you the first paragraph of the unclassified. It says, China's government-run talent recruitment program facilitate the legal and the illicit transfer of U.S. technology, intellectual property, and know-how to further China's science and technology development, military modernization, and goal of becoming a science and technology superpower by 2049. It's overseen by the Communist Party Central Committee, and it recruits scientists, engineers, entrepreneurs, and managers of all nationalities working or educated in the United States to commercialize and weaponize technologies. You both will agree that China is undertaking an effort to dominate the most important industries and technologies of the 21st century, and that they do so not simply by out-innovating us or out-investing us, but primarily by the either compelled or stolen transfer of intellectual property, the use of the recruitment of both U.S. and other individuals in academia and in studying in the United States to transfer technology. They are basically conducting an all-out assault to steal what we've already developed and use it as the baseline for their development so they can supplant us as the leader in the most important technologies of the 21st century. Is that not an accurate statement?
Senator, I believe what you've laid out is accurate, and a number of those activities and policies perhaps fall under the Made in China 2025 plan that I believe members of the committee or subcommittee are aware of. And while the full elements of that public policy, as well as I'm assuming the private policies of China are still under review and we're still looking at it, I think we can look at the track record of what China has done when they've done mass subsidization of certain commodity industries like steel and like aluminum, and the ill effects that has had on world markets, number one, but also on the national security of other nations, the United States included. And the Trump administration has taken strong action on those fronts. Now that we're looking at industries or high-tech industries that China itself deems strategic, for instance, semiconductors, artificial intelligence, this raises similar and perhaps more concerning issues with regard to the ill effects it'll have on world markets, on world economies, but also the national security implications that you lay out. And this really goes to the broader competition that we've laid out in our national security strategy between the closed economic and political system, international system that China is advocating, and the free and open, the more free and open Indo-Pacific and world order that we've supported for over 70 years.
I don't want to run out of time, and I support the open system. I think that's very important. But at the core, the most immediate and urgent threat here is the historic, unprecedented theft and transfer of intellectual property in the hundreds of billions a year, unforeseen in the past, and that has direct national security implications. For it is accurate, Mr. Scriber, that technological high ground almost always translates to national security and the ability of a nation to defend itself and its interests, correct?
Yes, sir, and I think this is an area where we're paying attention, but we've got to improve because of the aggressive nature of the Chinese efforts that you mentioned, and it has to be whole of government. We have to look at visas for university students. We have to look at defense supply chain. We have to look at all these things because of the aggressive nature of the Chinese.
And I guess the point I'm trying to drive is when we talk about issues like ZTE, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And apart from having helped to violate sanctions, the issue with them is not really so much a trade issue per se as it is a mechanism by which it is a technology, an infrastructure that they can use not simply to establish high ground there and market share in the U.S. at the expense of our domestic providers, but also as a way to steal intellectual property and secrets of other commercial endeavors that they also view to be critical. And that's why that issue is so important. And I hope the administration does not move forward on this supposed deal I keep reading about. Two topics I want to touch on and rapidly because it also has to do with part of this effort. That apart from the technology side, let me give you some things that have happened very recently. United and American Airlines are being threatened by China that if their website doesn't say Taiwan, China, they're going to lose their routes and have fines and penalties. Marriott fired an American worker based in the United States of America because he accidentally liked a tweet on Tibet. Yesterday, The Gap, we've all been to The Gap, they printed a T-shirt with the map of China, but it didn't include Taiwan, and of course, The Gap quickly scrambled out, apologized. They issued a statement respecting China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. American companies are being bullied to the point where an American was fired in the United States because he liked the tweet. What is the State Department doing when companies come to them and say, we are being harassed in this way? Because these companies have all caved.
Thank you for the question, Senator. The State Department believes these actions are outrageous and disturbing. I think we're all familiar with the sharp power that Beijing wields its market access as a cudgel to reap certain economic concessions from private sector entities like intellectual property transfer or certain joint ventures with Chinese companies. What they're doing now is extending this market access tactic to free speech, to extend, as the White House called it, the Chinese view of political correctness to private sector actors, and in particular, U.S. companies. And we find that outrageous. As you've seen, the White House and the State Department have raised this publicly, condemned it publicly. We've raised it privately with our Chinese counterparts, and we've discussed this with the companies at issue. China is very much well aware that it's wading into treacherous waters here. And they understand that if they continue along this path, continue to employ these tactics, that it will negatively affect the U.S.-China relationship and that there will be consequences.
I'm not so sure they think they're in treacherous waters because they keep winning. All these companies keep doing what they want because in the end, having market share is more important to these companies apparently than the trends that these are setting. I have one more quick question because one of the things China's trying to do as well is influence votes in international forums and have leverage even in our own hemisphere. So just in the last year, we've had not one, but two countries in this hemisphere. First Panama, after a lot of investment in Panama, and now the Dominican Republic 2 weeks ago, after who knows what happened, both switch away from Taiwan's recognition and towards recognition of China. And now I'm hearing that perhaps Paraguay might be next. And they're going to continue to work on this. And of course, when they invest all this money in these countries and frankly, oftentimes bribe individuals and government, things that our companies can't do, but their companies can. When they do these things, it's often as leverage to align those countries' foreign policy to what China's foreign policy may be. And the first step is to get them to break away from Taiwan, no longer recognize Taiwan, and align themselves and recognize China. What is the State Department doing? I know that's in a different bureau, but it has to be, it's part of China's global ambition and work. What are we doing? Are we telling countries around the region that we don't want to see them continue to do this? Have we talked to Honduras and Guatemala and Paraguay and other countries in the region, many of whom receive significant aid from the United States? Do they hear from us that we care about this issue?
Senator, thank you for your question. Attempts to close off the international space of Taiwan and to alter the status quo across the strait are disturbing to the United States. And in our U.S. One China policy, we seek to strengthen ties with Taiwan. We seek to provide them proper defensive capabilities to defend their democracy. But we also want to maintain the status quo because it's the key to stability across the strait. So any moves to strip Taiwan of its diplomatic partners disturbs that status quo. And it's something that we make clear to our partners and we make clear to Beijing as well.
So we made it clear to the Dominican Republic that they shouldn't do what they did?
That is my understanding.
And they did it anyway. Thank you.